Hello, welcome back to my channel. And in this video, we're going to be covering the Oklahoma Sooners in their upcoming college football season. Last year was year one under Brent Venables. It was not a good year whatsoever. They were 6-7. They were absolutely bad on both sides of the football last year, and they performed awful. They were a 6-7 team. They had some very bad losses without that one signature victory under their first year head coach. Last year they started off 3-0, but then they had a 3-game losing streak against Kansas State, TCU, and Texas. Now, in retrospect, losing to Kansas State and TCU doesn't look too bad because they both played in the Big 12 championship game. Kansas State won, TCU still didn't win, but they still made it to the college football playoff and won a playoff game and performed in the national championship game. And I know a lot of people like to bring up that TCU got blown out in the national title game, but they still did something that the rest of the Big 12 had not done, and that was win a college football playoff game. And that includes Oklahoma. Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley made the college football playoff 4 times and didn't win a single game. And before TCU, they were the only team in the Big 12 that actually made a college football playoff. So TCU has more victories than the rest of that conference combined. And for TCU, that's still a good year for them. And the very next week after the TCU loss, after Oklahoma got blown out by TCU, they got blown out almost at just as embarrassing as Texas. Now, if you watch my Miami video, I talked about how Florida State made Miami quit, how they humiliated Miami, how the Florida State made Miami look embarrassing. But at least I could say with Miami, they got on the scoreboard because the score was 45-3. Oklahoma didn't even do that. They didn't even score a single point in that game. And then they get a couple of victories right after that, but then they lose to Baylor, and then they lose to West Virginia. West Virginia, I think they had like a 20-something consecutive losing streak in Big 12 competition. It was just to lose to West Virginia as an Oklahoma fan. It was had to be embarrassing. Then they finish off. They get the final win of the year against Oklahoma State in the Bedlam series. But then they lose an overtime shootout to Texas Tech. And then they lose to Florida State in the bowl game, which a lot of people thought Florida State was going to blow out Oklahoma. They didn't, but they still didn't win the game at the end of the day. And it was just an all-around bad year for Brent Venables as the head coach in his first year coaching the Sooners. Now, I know people like to talk about the bad year Billy Napier had at Florida, but I actually could argue Brent Venables' year at Oklahoma was worse than Billy Napier's first year at Florida because at least with Billy Napier, he got a couple of victories, a couple of signature wins against Utah, who went on to win the Pac-12, and South Carolina, who beat two top 10 teams in Clemson and Tennessee to end the year. And they ended that year on a very hot streak of momentum. So at least I can say with Billy Napier, he had a couple of signature wins in year one at Florida. I can't say the same about Brent Venables at Oklahoma. So here is Oklahoma's 2023 season. This is going to be the last season in the Big 12 before they head to the SEC, along with their Red River rivals, the Texas Longhorns. And excuse me for that. This is going to be a crucial year too for Brent Venables because if he cannot show any improvement in year two while still in the Big 12, albeit his final year in the Big 12, but if he can't show any improvement in year two, any major improvement in year two at Oklahoma before he joins the SEC, well, then the SEC is going to eat Oklahoma alive for the next couple of years afterwards. It's very important for your fan base and for your program to show that, hey, we are ready to compete in the SEC. We are ready to take on that challenge. We are ready to embark on the new journey that the Southeastern Conference will bring us. So they start off at home against the Arkansas State Red Wolves. That should be a victory. SMU actually has one of the best offenses in the country, even for a group of five school. They have one of the best offenses in the country. They're getting coached by Rhett Lashley, excuse me, who was the former offensive coordinator for the Miami Hurricanes under Manny Diaz. And SMU, after being coached by Sonny Dykes, went to Rhett Lashley, and between those two coaches, they have helped average 40 over 30 points a game for the SMU Mustangs. And I don't think that's going to be an easy I don't think that's going to be an easy game for Oklahoma at all because SMU knows how to put points on the board. I'm going to take a gamble here. I actually think SMU can go on the road and beat Oklahoma, and I'm going to predict that. I'm going to predict SMU goes on the road and beats Oklahoma with the amount of improvement that is needed from Oklahoma right now. Going up against SMU is going to be a very tough matchup for the Sooners, and I actually think SMU can go on the road and beat them. Then the very next game is at Tulsa, the Golden Hurricanes. I think Oklahoma should win that. Cincinnati Bearcats. These is going to be one of the four new teams in the Big 12. That's going to be making their inaugural debut in the conference this year. Cincinnati, along with UCF, who you see on the screen. UCF, BYU, and Houston. Those are two of the four new teams out in the Big 12. And then you have Iowa State right after that, and then you have Texas after that before you head into your bye week. I think Oklahoma needs to go on the road and beat Cincinnati, so that way they can get themselves pumped up and get a new stretch of momentum heading into that Texas game. I think it's very important that Oklahoma beats Cincinnati and Iowa State before heading into Texas. It's the one of the biggest rivalries in college football, and I said it in the Auburn video that the three top rivalries in college football to me are Ohio State, Michigan 1, Red River rivalry 2, and then the Iron Bowl 3. And for Oklahoma, I think it is very imperative that you win your final two games before you go into Dallas at the Cotton Bowl Stadium to play your Red River rivals. So because of that, I'm going to have Oklahoma beat Cincinnati and Ohio and Iowa State just to give themselves some momentum heading into the game against Texas. And Texas, I do think does beat Oklahoma because I like the direction that Texas is heading under Steve Sarkisian way more than I like Oklahoma's direction heading under Brent Venables. Albeit it's still early for Brent Venables, but Steve Sarkisian on the other side is well into his tenure at Texas. He has the experience. He's getting the recruiting. And I think he's starting to develop some serious progression for the Longhorns. I think at this point, heading into the bye week, Oklahoma will have a 4-2 record with victories against Arkansas State, Tulsa, Cincinnati, and Iowa State, with their losses coming to SMU and Texas. I I think Oklahoma will head into that bye week 4-2. Then they will play the UCF Knights right after their bye week. Uh, I think it's a tough task to ask UCF to go from the American Athletic Conference into the Big 12 on the road against Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma can bounce back with a victory against the Knights. I think Oklahoma can go on the road and beat Kansas. Kansas, right, quite frankly, is one of those teams that 6 to 8 wins for them is a good year. Before Lance Claypool, Kansas Jayhawks were a clown show. They were just an annual year of bad football, bad coaching, bad recruiting, just bad everything in regards to college football. Uh, I mean, they had probably the worst stretch of head coaching hires that any college football program could have in the history of the sport. And I'm not even just saying that because it's recent. I'm just saying if you look at the history of every other Power Five school in the nation right now, I don't think there's a team that had a worse stretch of head coaching hires than the Kansas Jayhawks. Turner Gill, Charlie Weiss, David Beatty, Les Miles. It was just 10 years of just absolute atrocities in Lawrence, Kansas. And for Lance Claypool, getting them to a 6-7 record last year for them was like almost as good as winning the conference because they just did not have a season where they won more than 3 games before Lance Claypool showed up. So for Kansas being a 6 to 8 win program for them that's really good. I think Oklahoma goes on the road and beats them. Then you have what will be the final installment of the Oklahoma State and Oklahoma Bedlam Series rivalry. It's one of the biggest in-state rivalries in college football Oklahoma and Oklahoma State absolutely despise each other. They cannot stand one another, and Oklahoma State has even more animosity towards Oklahoma because they're now canceling the Bedlam series because of the fact that they have to play in the SEC now, which is kind of ridiculous. There's plenty of teams that play in-state rivals despite not being in the same conference, especially in the SEC. Florida plays Florida State, Georgia plays Georgia Tech, South Carolina plays Clemson. Uh, Even the Kentucky Wildcats play Louisville. So why in the world does all these teams have to? Why are all these SEC teams? Why do they have to play in-state rivals despite not being in the same conference? But now Oklahoma is beyond wild to me. Even Florida in 2024 is going to be playing both Miami and Florida State and UCF in addition to their SEC competition. So they're going to be playing three in-state competitors in addition to their SEC schedule. So I don't think there's any excuse for Oklahoma to quit this rivalry and just completely put an end to the series. Uh, I'm just a big fan of rivalries, and I think rivalries, long-term, historic, traditional rivalries in college football should be protected because it's one of the reasons why we love the sport. But get back on track, I think Oklahoma can go on the road and beat Oklahoma State. I'm going to have them beating Oklahoma State. I'm going to have Oklahoma get revenge for losing to West Virginia last year and beat the Mountaineers. After that, they're going to be on the road to play in BYU. And that's going to be a tough game, not only because of the fact that it's on the road, but the state of Utah, they have a altitude level of over 6,000 feet, which is above the city of Denver, which is known as the Mile High City. 6,000 feet of altitude is going to be tough for any team that doesn't play in high altitude states to adjust to. And to have only a week to prepare for that is going to be big. Hopefully, Oklahoma is allowed to go to BYU and train there and get acclimated to it. I'm going to say Oklahoma loses to BYU, and I'm going to say Oklahoma loses to TCU at home on the final regular season game of the year. That's my record prediction for Oklahoma. I have them beating Arkansas State, losing to SMU, beating Tulsa, beating Cincinnati, beating Iowa State, losing to Texas, beating UCF, beating Kansas, beating Oklahoma State, beating West Virginia, and then losing to BYU and TCU. So that's one, two, three, four. I have Oklahoma with an 8-4 record to bounce back from the 6-7 year that they had last year, which I think is going to be a for big confidence booster for Oklahoma heading into their SEC schedule in 2024. I think this is a crucial year for Brent Venables to show improvement over what he is building in Norman, and I think 8-4 would be a very good season. If you're an Oklahoma fan, I think that should be a reasonable expectation. You don't need them to win 10 games or even more than that, but I think a nice 8-4 season would be a big morale booster for the program, and I think Brent Venables will coach a much better Oklahoma team in 2023.